Hey guys. Okay, so let's talk about week 1 and week 2 of the liquid diet pre-op. So, one thing that I could give you some major advice on that I didn't think to do myself. Well, I guess I did think about it, but I didn't think it was going to be as big of a deal as it was, is to make your own broth, or if you're just not good at making things like that or good at cooking, to ask someone to make broth for you. This would have been really, really helpful for me to have done ahead of time. However, I figured I would be dealing with all kinds of nausea and who knows what else after the surgery, so I thought that the store-bought broth would be a better bet. So the problem was, after just like 3 days, I think, of the store-bought broth, I could barely stand the taste of it anymore. So I originally had bought organic, low-sodium vegetable and chicken broth. However, when I was rereading my pamphlet for the post-op diet, I saw that they asked you to get full sodium broth. So I went and got more broth, full sodium broth, and I also bought the Better Than bouillon to add to the broth that I had, the store-bought broth that I had, to add some of the sodium back into it, because they are wanting you to retain the water for it. In hindsight, the low sodium broth probably would have been a better idea for me, because I don't handle high sodium diets well, and it did end up causing a lot of swelling and edema in my feet and ankles and my calves after surgery. But the Better Than bouillon did help, but I got really, really tired of the store-bought broth really quickly. It's just so filtered, that it's probably a good option to have, maybe if you just get one of those for your first few days. But having homemade broth is really helpful, because you're having so much Gatorade, which is so sweet, that your body very quickly starts to crave something of more substance, something with more flavor. I was desperate after just 3 days. Now, I also thought my stomach would be more sensitive. However, I think I said in my previous video, my facility that I had the surgery done at, their protocol is for you to be on Pepto-Bismol and Tums 3 times a day for the first 2 weeks post-op, and then just the Tums for the rest of the month. So for me, it wasn't painful. Like, didn't like irritate my stomach to have broth or anything really that I was drinking at the time. But that broth got really old. So I ended up going to get some rotisserie chickens from the grocery store and asking a friend of mine to make broth for me. So they use the rotisserie chickens, which are already, seasoned and flavored, and something familiar, and made broth with vegetables and things like that in it, and they strained it really well for me, and that was amazing. That changed everything. I still probably ended up adding a little bit of the Better Than bouillon to that as well, because I was really enjoying the flavor. I would definitely suggest getting Better Than bouillon over bouillon cubes if you were thinking of using that for broth or in your broth, because the flavor is phenomenal in Better Than bouillon. Like, I never really used that before, and I'm definitely going to be using that in my cooking from now on, because it's an amazing product. But I was able to get a lot of broth, like I think I got 2 or 3 different flavors of rotisserie chicken, and had asked them to make the broth. I mean, at that point, I could have made the broth myself. However, my issue at the time was that I didn't want to struggle with wanting to eat the chicken. I knew in my mind, like, there's no way I can put any food, like real food, in my mouth or in my stomach whatsoever. But I didn't want to deal with the struggle of smelling a rotisserie chicken or smelling the broth cooking. I didn't want to put myself in the place where it became a struggle. So having someone else make it was really helpful. But it would have been really nice if I did something like that, like before my pre-op diet, because it would have been a struggle during the pre-op diet as well. But to do something like that before the pre-op diet and freeze it in like, Ziploc bags or some kind of container, if you can do that, I would 100% suggest making your own broth or asking someone to make your broth for you before the surgery. If you can even have them make different broth flavors, chicken, pork, beef, whatever else that you might like, that would help even more. Because I think one of the things I've noticed that I've struggled with through, like, I am filming this after the, like, far further after the surgery. I'm almost at my 4-week mark now. But I would say that one of the biggest struggles that you're going to be dealing with during the liquid phase and the pureed phase is getting tired of the same flavors throughout the day over and over, which is strange to me because I'm the kind of person where if I find a food that I like I will eat it very often. Like my range of different foods that I eat in a normal, like before, wasn't very varied. I'm someone who would love a good 5 to 10 things and just eat those 5 to 10 things all the time. So I'm almost surprised that I get so tired of flavors. Maybe it's just the fact that these flavors are liquid and pureed and things like that. But even in the pureed stage, I made things and got really tired of it really quick and had to switch it up often, just so that I didn't start hating it, or eventually would just start upsetting my stomach because I was having too much of one thing or whatever. So I would definitely, like I said, suggest that you have broth, like homemade broth, prepared ahead of time, in as many different flavors as you can. Otherwise, if all you can do is the store-bought broth, make sure you have like Better Than Bouillon or something else to add additional flavor. I think at a moment I was really desperate and I tried putting like a ramen packet after on day 3. I tried putting a ramen packet in my broth, and that wasn't a good idea. Ramen, that is very diffused by the noodles, but the ramen packets by themselves, one, the sodium is just way too ridiculously high, but also that flavor is way too much by itself. And it doesn't taste quite right by itself as well. So that wasn't a good idea, but I was desperate at that time just to have some kind of different flavor. So that 2-week period, after I think day 4 or 5 is when I got the broth. After I got the new broth, it made it all so much easier to deal with. At that point I was starting to, I think after that many days, I started to warm up my broth, because before, and I'll put another little picture or video up of it now, of the container that I purchased that held all of my 2-ounce containers of liquid for week 1 and 2. I had broth in there with the Gatorade, and I was just drinking it all either cold or room temperature. But once I was able to get the homemade broth, I was able to put that in an 8-ounce mug and kind of just sip on that over a period of time, and that was really helpful. During this time, I was doing all the walking that I needed to do. I wasn't feeling quite tired yet. I did take off a week of work. That was about all I needed. But however, I do work from home, and it is like a computer job, so it isn't demanding at all. So I was totally fine only having that week off. And I remember being told by some other people, you won't be able to put on a regular bra for a while. So if you work outside of the home, you may need to take off a little bit more time, because one of your incisions is right at the top of your bra strap, on the bottom near your sternum, and it's pretty painful to have anything right there for a little while. So I was able to just wear sports bras and be comfortable. I could have not worn a bra if I didn't want to, but I was able to stay pretty comfortable because I do work from home. So the tiredness that you experience in the calorie deficit wasn't really hitting me that first week, but the second week I did definitely start to feel a little bit tired from that. And then I think I mentioned it in my last video, but I did have a little bit of a setback about 5 or 6 days after the surgery. I was having severe diarrhea after everything I drank, so I did end up having to have an ER trip just to make sure that everything was okay with that, because some diarrhea is expected after the surgery, but not the amount that I was having. So we had to check my electrolytes and my potassium and all of that, and just had to end up going on Imodium because it was a high sodium diet. I really struggled with the high sodium diet. So if you know you're someone who struggles with high sodium diets, and that has a lot of effects on you, it might be something you want to talk with your doctor or your bariatric nutritionist before surgery to talk about ways you can modify the diet a little bit to help you more. But lots of sugar-free Gatorade, lots of sugar-free popsicles, sugar-free Jello was okay at that time, as long as I didn't have too much of it at one time. And the broth was very helpful. And then lots of walking to keep, helping with any kind of air buildup or gas buildup that you're having at the time. And I had my staple removal right at the 2-week mark on the dot, and that wasn't painful. It was a little bit uncomfortable in some areas, but it wasn't painful. Some of my staples were kind of wanting to start pushing out after that 1 week already, but it was healing really well. I wasn't having much discomfort besides that one incision up in the upper sternum area. I wasn't having all that much discomfort from my incisions. So it was really nice to get those removed. They did put steri strips on after, and I had to be a little bit more careful showering at that point because they wanted the steri strips to stay on as long as possible. So, but it was just really nice not to have, those to be accidentally touching them or anything to possibly snag on to them and anything like that. So it was really nice to get those removed. It felt good to have them off of my body and for my stomach to look closer to normal. I'm at the 4-week mark now and there's still swelling in my abdomen. So I think it takes a while before that all goes away, but otherwise everything is really, really good. So my biggest suggestion is to have, 2-ounce containers. I wouldn't suggest 1 ounce because you have to drink 2 ounces every hour at first, and then you have to extend it from there. And so having just 1 ounce containers, I think only makes it harder. I think it's better to get yourself to drink those 2 ounces. So for this first 2 weeks, I had the 2-ounce containers of liquid that I used. The containers that I used have the lid already attached. I will try to link them below. I think I said I was going to do that in the other video and I forgot, but I'll link them below because they are also microwavable and top rack dishwasher safe. And when it comes to your pureed diet, having these microwavable containers is going to be super helpful because most of the stuff you're going to be pureeing is going to be stuff that you'd want to warm up. So having it be microwavable and not having to put in a different container is super helpful. So I love these containers. I'm sure I'll even use the 4-ounce ones that I use for the pureed diet after this time just to store smaller amounts of snacks or parts of meals in as well. So I definitely suggest those. But so the 2-week diet was, I think probably when I got to the 8 to 10 day mark, I was definitely craving something of more substance, something that I could chew, something of more, unique flavors. So I was very excited to make that transition, but it was hard to wait that 2 weeks. My body was really, really wanting more than that during the liquid diet. But I think the first, probably only the first 5 days, I continued to use the 2-ounce containers for the Gatorade. After about day 5, I think I was able to just drink Gatorade from the bottle. So I didn't have the larger Gatorade bottles. I had the ones that I think are only just 8 ounces. I think the smaller 8-ounce Gatorade bottles. So I was able to just sip from those. And so I would, make sure I pulled out the amount of those Gatorades I needed to drink per day. And because I did have that issue with a hard time dealing with this high sodium diet of the Gatorade and the broth, I did start incorporating water after that emergency room appointment to help, my body rid some of that sodium, and that really helped. All the swelling went away and a lot of things calmed down with me incorporating water a little bit sooner than they initially wanted. So I just had, a 12-ounce Yeti without a straw, which I'll go ahead and insert a picture of here, that I would try to get through one or two of those a day in addition to a couple of the Gatorades. So I wasn't really using the 2-ounce containers after that first week. But if that's something you still need after the first week, then definitely keep using that. I didn't have to reincorporate the containers until the pureed diet, which were 4-ounce containers. So I guess it all will just depend on how your system is handling things, how long it starts to take you to be able to drink a little bit more. Hitting that first week, I think I needed to hit at least 32 ounces. After that, they wanted me reaching 60 ounces. Reaching the 32 ounces was never an issue for me. I was able to do that very easily. Anything over that was a struggle. So hitting the 60 ounces is something even 4 weeks after now where I'm at, I struggle to hit that full 60 ounces. I'm working on different methods trying to help myself get there, but it is a little bit harder for me to reach that amount of liquids. But my system seems to be doing okay with the amount that I'm getting in right now. And my goal is 60 ounces of water, and then if I'm able to have any kind of protein shake or any other liquid or any sugar-free popsicles, that's just additional hydration that I'm happy to get, but I want to get at least the 60 ounces of water. So that is what I'm working towards. So that's how the first 2 weeks went. I'll go ahead and do another update video next week where I talk about the puree diet, and I'll show you some of the recipes that I went off of and how that first, I guess I'll show you the whole 2 weeks of the puree diet, so it doesn't have to be too many videos, but the puree diet was definitely really, really helped. It helped with energy level. It helped with feeling somewhat satiated. It helped with having multiple new flavors and textures, being able to use a spoon, which I did use a baby spoon, and things like that. So it's very exciting to be able to get to that step. I'm not in the biggest rush to get past purees right now because I've noticed if something was a little bit too textured in my purees that it could be rough. So I would definitely take it very slowly when it gets to soft foods. Oh, I also wanted to mention that, I do have fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis. And for the surgery, I was asked to go off of Rinvoq, which is my rheumatoid arthritis medication and also immunosuppressant. I had to be off of it for 2 weeks before the surgery and 1 week after. So I was able to go back on, it was 1 week before the surgery and 2 weeks after, I think. So I was able to go back on Rinvoq right at the 2 week mark after I finished my liquid diet, which helped a lot because with the amount of walking that I was doing, I was starting to have some pain in my joints and some swelling in my joints without having that Rinvoq and having, my rheumatoid arthritis medication. So that was really great to be able to start on that. And it did have an effect not to be able to have that medication, but I'm very grateful to be able to be back on it because it is a life-changing medication and it helps so much. And I have not noticed any kind of side effects or any kind of issues happening after starting back on Rinvoq with 3 weeks off. So I'm just very grateful that everything is still going really smoothly. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. All right. Bye.